Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Offside, as well as their lead Lakers content creator. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Luka return on the fan vote that came in so far. He led everybody in terms of fan voting, so we'll talk about that. LeBron I kind of remained where he always was as far as the voting went. So it's going to come down to a decision. Whether or not to allow him or not allow him, but like whether he makes the All-Star game is going to come down to some decisions outside his control. I would still be pretty shocked if he doesn't make it one way or another. I want to talk about the Luka return from a couple of different perspectives. But then after that, I'm going to get out of the way and answer as many of your questions as I can. There's a couple of questions in the iTunes mailbag, and then however many questions that I see here in the chat, I will get to as many of those in the next hour or so that I possibly can. So get them in as quickly as you can, because I will be scrolling back up to the top and then going in some kind of order down the list from there. So the faster you get here and the faster that you get your question in, probably the likelier it becomes that I answer it. The best way to make sure that you don't, that you get your questions in on settings like or episodes like this is to subscribe to the show and then turn on notifications for the show whenever we go live. The best way to get your topic covered on the show, bar none, though, is by leaving it in the form of a 5-star review on iTunes, and I will get to it. I get to those. I have not missed one in a long time, dating back to the Locked On Lakers days. So, that's those two things, that little bit of housekeeping. The other thing, as far as the schedule goes, right, the Lakers don't play tonight. They play tomorrow. They play on the road, I believe, which means, or they're on the road for the next 8 games, which means that it's going to be a lot of me and Raj here in the lounge after those games. So look forward to that. And then we have probably a Harrison episode and a Pete episode as well in there too this week. So plenty of reason to hit that subscribe button here in the Lakers Lounge. If you guys are watching on Twitter, you can find the Lakers Lounge at youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge and subscribe there. If you guys are listening to the show in the morning via podcast, subscribe everywhere it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, but doesn't matter to me. And then, like I said, get those 5-star reviews in with questions attached to them, and I will get to those as every single week. That's the first place that I look for questions. So with all of that said, and with no further ado, let's talk about Luka Doncic making the All-Star team. So Luka makes the All-Star team. He is the Lakers' lone representative right now. He is joined in the West by Steph Curry, Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Pretty good lineup, I would say, coming out of the West. In the East, I should probably have had that pulled up already. But in the East, you have Giannis, Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson, and Jaylen Brown. So I would say the West team is quite a bit better. But the tough thing with some of these things is guys like Jokic and Luka don't take it very seriously. And that makes, on paper matchups significantly less fun than they would otherwise be. But this year, I think, I'll get to the second half of the point here in a second. I do want to say, shouts to Lakers fans, right? You showed out. You got your guy in there with more votes than any other player in the league from a fan perspective. Luka got the best weighted score Well, the second best weighted score in the West, Jokic got the best one with a 1.75. Luka was a 2.5, which is better than um, everybody in the East, also outside of Giannis. And yeah, you're looking at a lot of people who recognize the season that Luka is having so far. I mean, he's leading the league in scoring. He's dishing out a bunch of assists every game, rebounding the ball well. The Lakers did a lot of winning early and are just kind of, that they've treaded water recently. I think that's part of why Luka didn't fully lap the field in ways that I kind of thought he was going to coming into the season. But overall, I actually really like studying all-star votes as a means of kind of taking a bird's eye view of trends throughout the league and also obviously specifically with the Lakers. And I thought that the LeBron return was indicative of a Lakers fan base that is kind of sick of this team and ready to see it take its next step forward. Had the Lakers been a lot better, I think that had they maybe made a move in the offseason so that this roster would have been more playoff exciting than they are now, I think you would see a lot more votes for LeBron. I think you would have seen more votes for Austin. Austin, obviously slipped pretty far down the voting list because of his injury, which was obviously a bummer. But I think the Lakers or the Lakers fan base would have really supported this team if they believed in it more. I find it interesting that Luka was kind of apathy proof in this regard. I think he's just been that good, and he's the Lakers' best player, and the Lakers' best player typically resides pretty high on these lists. And so it'll be interesting to see um, what this looks like here moving forward as, he's kind of the given vote getter, but the fan base normally supports, like AD used to get a ton of support from the Lakers fan base as well. And we just didn't see that much this year, right? So yeah, I think the pressure is on the front office to improve the team, and then the pressure is on this team to improve their efforts in the postseason. And if and only if that happens, then you'll see a return to more typical fan voting returns. Now, one thing I did find really interesting here. So I should have added this to the thing. Let's see if I can. So I'm going to bring this over here. And then I am going to put it up on the screen. But this is the overall vote return here for the All-Star game. And there you go. I'm going to get this off over here so you guys can see more of it. All right, so you guys can kind of see, you can see the weighted scores there. Let's look specifically at the wet. Well, I mean, I think you could look throughout, but you look at the wet. Well, no, let's look at the West only. So, uh, player rank, Jokic is first overall, and I think he has been so spectacular this year that he is just kind of off to the side of this portion of the conversation. Where I do find things to get a little bit interesting here is with Victor Wembanyama and with Luka Doncic, where Luka got the most fan votes in the league, and the players gave him the sixth most votes. That's the biggest split, I believe, of any player in the top 10. Tough spot here for Anthony Edwards. I guess he tied with Victor Wembanyama, and Wemby just happened to get more fan votes and winds up getting that final spot as a result. But anyway, so you have that pretty big split there between fan and player rank. Then again, with Wemby, you have it's closer, but fans have him sixth, and the players have him seventh. They have, both like two starters for the West are would be outside of the player vote by, like a decent couple of spots. Otherwise, if it was just players, Anthony Edwards would be one of the starters for the West, and um Kevin Durant would be the fifth starter for the West. And I I I don't want to have I don't want to have this discussion as on a solo pod and get fully into it. But like I think there is always going to be a little bit of animosity between American born players and international players, and specifically international players that get a lot of media hype. You look at the media vote for Victor Wembanyama; he is fourth. Luka finishes second there, and I just think with I guess I do kind of have to say this part: white European players or non-black international players. I think there happens to be some animosity there. You always hear guys say like, well, if so and so's name ended with a chich, they'd be talked about very differently in the media. I don't even necessarily begrudge players for feeling that way sometimes, given some of the talking points that are levied against certain players in the NBA. Just like we see it in the NFL right now. The conversation about CJ Stroud is very, very different from the conversation about Josh Allen, right? And the conversations about Lamar Jackson tend to be very, very different than the conversations about some of the about again Josh Allen. So I don't want to even get into all of that aspect of it. What I'm really excited about, though, is what this might mean for the game itself, where I don't think Luka is going to care that he got less player votes, and I don't think Wemby is well. Wemby might. He's pretty. I think he's a little petty about some of these things, but I don't think those guys are honestly going to care all that much. But I do think players like, American born players are going to be a little annoyed at that representation in the West, and somebody like Anthony Edwards, who is having a fantastic season. He's been more available, I believe, than Victor Wembanyama as well. Like there's going to be some, all right, let's show that some of those guys over there are a little overhyped. And I think if you add that to just kind of the natural rivalry that exists between the NBA's international players and the NBA's more domestic players, you're going to see, I think a hopefully, I think I'm a little nervous that the NBA kind of overcooked this thing by doing like the three-team thing for some reason. But I do think there's a real possibility here that between the rivalry that exists between domestic players and international players, and this split that you see here with some of the international players who got different kinds of voting bases than some of the domestic players, like I think you might wind up seeing a game that has a little bit more spice to it than the last few years. And like I really wish they would have just said, all right, here's the American team, here's the international team. Yes, it might mean that a couple international guys maybe shouldn't have gotten in, and they do, or maybe it means that a couple of American born players get in that maybe shouldn't have. I don't care. Give me all of the best international players. Give me all of the best domestic players, and let them go at it. And hopefully that game stays close enough, long enough that you get to a fourth quarter where that belt is on the line, and you see this. Like I'm a big golf guy, love golf my entire life. My one of like top three sporting events to watch whenever it happens is the Ryder Cup. I absolutely love the Ryder Cup. and the pretty heated rivalry that exists in those tournaments when they happen. And maybe like, even if the league decided, hey, we're gonna do this like every other year, just so that half of our league doesn't hate the other half of the league. Like I whatever it would take. But like I've always thought that the league has been reluctant to attach a cash prize to the All-Star game. The league has been reluctant to do too many things that would inspire that like normally work when it comes to getting guys to care a little bit more. In this case, they did finally lean into the notion of the competitive fire that exists by way of the Olympics whenever we see them, right? Like, so my absolute favorite Kobe game was that game against Spain, where it was really close. Pau Gasol played like a man on a mission, and you had you had a loaded American team, that redeem team. And you had some guys that like were at stages of their careers where they were all like alphas on their team. And the guy that they said, hey, man, take us home, was Kobe. And he did, right? And it was incredible. And those two teams played super hard against each other. You had the play where uh, Kobe knocked Powell over. It was just it's great. Like, I think that is something that you know whether it's because of national pride from both sides, or whether it's a matter of petty, kind of more petty squabbles because of some of the narratives that do actually exist. And at the very least, players feel exist, based on other factors in these conversations. Like, I think it leads to some real drama, or could lead to some real drama, and that's what these All-Star games have really been missing recently. Good Lord, strokes are fun. All right, let's go ahead and dive on into some of your guys' questions and comments, starting with the iTunes mailbag, which, again, best place to get your questions in and guarantee that they will be answered. A Gear 40 kicks us off with the Lakers generally go on a winning streak after my rants and make me look dumb, but this team just lost to the Kings. So here we go. I'm right there with you, man. Every time I rant and rave about either the team as a whole, or the organization, or a player specifically, they seem to turn things around pretty quickly. That just means we have to rant and rave more often. But anyway, here's the actual question or rant. Walter has to see through this managerial nonsense, right? You don't go car shopping and then let the salesman tell you what you need. You tell them what you want. Pelinka is a salesman, and the rest of the front office is acting like an uninformed buyer, walking out with every single dealer add-on. I know changes can't be made right now, but Jeannie and Walter have to at least see it, right? Jeannie will not. It's going to say, I'm going to keep on telling you guys this, and I know it annoys a faction of the listening base here and viewer base, but Jeannie will not see shortcomings from Rob Pelinka. That is just I don't think she is capable of evaluating him properly, or at least evaluating him to the standard that Lakers fans wish he was evaluated to. Mark Walter, I do think, is a little bit more likely, or a lot more likely, to see through some of that stuff, just given the kinds of people and that he is employed with, running the Dodgers. So I do think that there's some hope there when it comes to you know not falling for the same talking points every year, and not falling for this, I think, misplaced hope that the Lakers might be able to get, superstar X. Like, the funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other day. When it comes to pursuit of superstars, the guys that the Lakers eventually get tend to be guys that, like, either force their way outright to the Lakers, and in ways that you can see coming from a mile away, or fall in the Lakers' lap, right? Like most recently, you look at the last few superstar acquisitions, right? LeBron was a free agent, and I would say you knew fairly early on, the Lakers made that trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That at the time, some people were like, wait, why? Why would the Lakers help the Cavs put together a team that makes more sense around LeBron? When really the smart people were saying, wait, why did the Cavs just help the Lakers open up that much cap space? And that second question, right, wound up being the more important one, because obviously LeBron winds up signing with the Lakers in large part because of all of that cap space that the Lakers were able to create. And so there's one superstar acquisition. I guess if you want to go even further back, Powell was a like not somebody that the Lakers necessarily planned for, right? There were guys that they were kind of in on, Kevin Garnett, Jason Kidd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like there was no like multi-season pursuit of Pau Gasol at the time. There was, I would say, at least half a season's worth of positioning for LeBron. And then with Anthony Davis, right? Remember how long that took? Partially because Magic didn't know what he was doing, and partially because the Pelicans didn't want to give Anthony Davis what he wanted. And then eventually cooler heads prevailed, and basically what felt like 37 years later, the Lakers were able to land Anthony Davis. But Anthony Davis also put a finger and clutch, put a finger on that scale to an almost unprecedented degree in terms of a player trying to force a team to trade that player to their desired destination. And they went all out, right? Like Anthony Davis's dad was out there saying he never wanted to see AD play for the Celtics. Anthony Davis made it really clear he didn't want to play for the Knicks. We know that there is some clutch animosity kind of directed towards the Knicks. I think there was some of that going on, and then eventually, AD winds up with the Lakers after a long and arduous process that was mostly held up by stubbornness by both sides the first time the negotiations took place. And then with Luka, nobody saw that coming. That wasn't something that the Lakers were like positioning themselves for. They were, like, generally speaking, keeping, or like, I would even go so far as to say that they were trying to dry powder. Like they you had you know for some reason, like, wet powder, or what, like, you had powder that had been, potentially used, and the Lakers were sitting there, like, with a blow dryer, trying to dry it off, so that when the LeBron and AD era ended, they would be better positioned. And and um but that wasn't for Luca. That was just kind of a general, yeah, we don't see these guys going anywhere, so let's try to keep as much of our assets at the ready, for whenever they are finally gone. And then Luca just kind of like falls in their lap. And as a result, frankly, of that stance from before, where the Lakers were making the, I think, just fatal mistake of not using assets to improve the team and win now while they had LeBron and AD, or acquiring assets for the post LeBron and AD era. They were just kind of sitting idle. And what that meant was Luka gets here, and the Lakers neither have a team good enough to compete with Luka right now, and don't really have the assets necessary to improve the team to the extent that it needs to compete at the level that you would expect a Luka Doncic team to compete. So, like, I think, the Lakers just kind of made the penny wise, dollar dumb decisions over the last few years with LeBron and AD, and it actually put them in a worse spot for when Luka showed up. Like, just imagine this Lakers team with a role player, or maybe even a couple of role players, that the Lakers could have acquired had they used the pick that they used on Jalen Hood-Schifino and the expiring money at that time, to get a player who would have helped at the end of the LeBron and AD era. Or imagine if they had used the pick that they had used on Dalton Connect on, a veteran, to improve their chances while they had LeBron and AD still. Or just imagine if their draft and scouting departments actually did their job and say brought in Jaime Jaquez for a individual workout when they chose not to. So there's like obviously several bad decisions that led the Lakers to the point that they are currently right now. But I do hope and I do think that if Rob Pelinka tries to walk into Mark Walters' office and do the jazz hands next superstar bit that he's been able to get away with Jeannie Buss for a while, uh, I think Mark Walter will see through that and be like, all right, fine. You wanna keep that powder dry for acquiring that superstar eventually. Okay, that's okay. That's fine when it comes to team planning, but also make sure you're at the very least acquiring assets by, since you're not going to be trying to win to the extent that you should be, you may as well trade Rui for a second round pick, or you may as well trade the cap space that the Lakers are going to have next year for some additional picks as well. See if you could talk to LeBron and ask him how he feels about being traded. If it gives him a better chance at winning and it gives the Lakers a better chance at acquiring a couple of assets here and there. Like if Rob Pelinka goes into Mark Walters' office and says, yeah, we didn't do this, this, and this, and this because can't buy a house that isn't for sale. Mark Walters, like a lot of people didn't that would basically say, a lot of people didn't think that the Lakers were for sale. And yet here I sit, Rob. So go out there and rustle up a market and find yourself a couple of houses that make even a little bit more sense than the one that you're currently living in. All right. The next question that I have from iTunes comes from Viva Exceptionalism. Anthony, I've had allergies all my life and they suck. They absolutely do. I basically spent way too much money over the last, I would say, week or so buying air purifiers from Costco. And I have one basically in my room, both of the kids' bedrooms. I have one in my office. I have a big one in the living room slash it's called a great room out here where you combine like your kitchen and your dining room and your living room all in one place. And so basically, like I have all of these purifiers all throughout the house in the hopes of making it so that I can hop on here and not look like Will Smith and Hitch. But yeah, they are getting, I do feel a lot better today than I did last night. I do kind of wonder if it's like a late night thing too, that maybe I'm just better off recording whenever I can during the day. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, they just go away when the cedar subsides, but we'll see. All right. So the actual question, although the Bronny thing has been a fiasco since day one, I wouldn't cut or trade him because of the Rich Paul comment. It would look like the Lakers are punishing the kid for the sins of the father's mouthpiece. LeBron is another matter. I would tell him that we, the Lakers, do not want to do business with someone who does not immediately disavow his agent's harmful and irresponsible comments, and that therefore the Lakers will not be offering him a contract for next season. Since his production and percentages are down and his age is going up, it won't be a big loss. And the money saved can go towards faster, more athletic players. If he makes a stink, send him home. I don't think either team want to end this relationship with that kind of outward animosity. I think the Lakers understand that this thing has probably run its course. I think LeBron probably understands the same. And they're all just kind of trying to reach that finish line um without the kind of ugly sentiment that can paint a picture incorrectly um just because of that final chapter, right? It's like I have a hard time watching the original Game of Thrones series because it ended so poorly. And I remember one time I went back and it just happened to be on HBO or something like that. And I was watching an episode, I think it was Battle of the Bastards it was on, and I was like, man, I forgot how incredible this show was. And the reason I forgot how incredible that show was because of how things ended there at the end. And by watching Battle of the Bastards again and reliving some of those memories, it reminded me, all right, we had it pretty damn good there for a while. And if you end things too ugly with LeBron and it kind of reconfigures how we think of that era, I would be a bummer, right? That would be a real bummer. It's kind of like the Kobe and Shaq thing, right? Where it took those two guys way too long to wake up and finally have a conversation of like, man, we did some pretty cool shit when we were able to get out of our own way. And you look at Shaq at the time of Kobe's passing, and he was a wreck, right? Like he was one of the more emotional people through all of that. And I think a lot of that had to do with regret. How long it took him to and how long it took him and Kobe to come to grips with like, yeah, we acted like idiots there for a while, but we shouldn't make that hang over all of the other stuff that we accomplished together. They're probably going to be the last team in NBA history to three-peat, and for a long time, they couldn't even consider that was a cool thing that they accomplished. Their stupid rivalry completely overshadowed that. So, um, I look, I joked about the Bronny thing, and I do really, more than I think about it, think that the best way to do this is to just put Rich Paul on the like next time he says something dumb on his podcast, put him up on the Jumbotron, put that quote, right? Like, some kind of a quote box in there and let Lakers fans let him know how they feel about that quote. And just keep on doing it so long as Rich Paul is open to doing it. And um then you kind of force LeBron to be like, hey, stop picking on my agent. And then the Lakers could say, tell him to stop saying dumb shit that sows discord in our hallways, and everybody can kind of move along. So that's something that I think would probably work pretty well. And then we can all move on as soon as those dumb quotes also stop. But I don't think it would be so. I don't think the Lakers want to create that kind of animosity with LeBron. I don't think LeBron wants to finish on bad terms with the Lakers, or importantly, the Lakers fan base. All right, let's dive on into some of your guys' questions. And I see a starred comment, which means I get to play this bad boy. The question here comes from Ryan Lucas. They're waiting on Giannis/Jokic. No trades are coming. Well, Jokic is for sure not coming. Jokic is basically sat out this whole time and watched his team figure things out without him to an extent to where it's like, I really think they should be the favorites, the betting favorites to win a championship this year. Maybe they are just in the middle of the season from hell when it comes to injuries and they never get it together. But I think if they're healthy and the Thunder are healthy, I would take the Nuggets pretty confidently in that series. And as far as Giannis goes, I mean, how many times? I think it's probably one of our more popular episodes to date, right? Was Harrison and I making fun of Giannis's one-on-one with the Athletic, and the several times that Giannis is like, I am here committed right now. It's like, That's not how this works. And he had that one funny comment about how, he's the hottest girl at the club and he expected all of the local reporters to laugh at it and nobody did. Like you are seeing, and I thought that was also really telling because those reporters probably also hear some stuff that they can't quite report quite yet. And eventually, if and when Giannis departs from Milwaukee, you'll get some of those empty the notebook articles about what that relationship was like at the very end, which, I always find pretty cowardly. But regardless, they are still very telling whenever they happen, and I think we're eventually going to get one of those when Giannis leaves. And but still, like the fact that you had Zach Lowe go on his podcast the other day and say how I guess the Hawks are waiting on that, and the Knicks are to a certain extent, and the Lakers and some of these other teams are all kind of keeping an eye on that situation. And I I think that it would be wise for the Lakers to improve their team this year as much as they possibly can without using that first round pick. And that probably puts a ceiling on the extent to which they can actually improve the team. And maybe it's all for naught because turns out you can't improve your team to the extent that you need to if those are the parameters that you're working with. But and frankly, that's what we saw in the summer, right? Where the Lakers basically made the decision that they were not going to go too far into their long-term books to improve the team. They didn't want to use, too much extra draft capital back during the offseason, in large part because of this Giannis plan. And at the end of the day, it leads to a roster here where like I always kind of push back because I have like Lakers people say, well, I thought you liked the offseason that the Lakers had. And I thought you and everybody else liked the offseason that the Lakers had. And I said, I can't speak for what everybody else says, but I said at the time, I think a few times over, yeah, it was a good offseason given the parameters that they worked with, but their competition didn't work with those same parameters, right? Like um the Denver Nuggets went out and got Cam Johnson, and the Houston Rockets went out and got Kevin Durant, and the Phoenix Suns went out and traded for Mark Williams, the guy that you didn't want to trade an extra first rounder for because of his health issues, and they got Mark Williams at a pretty steep discount in no small part because of the decisions that you made in trying to acquire and then eventually rescinding that trade. So, like, and you can go throughout the league and you can say, some of the teams that the Lakers would have to go through, they also didn't, care too much about their books. And this is my thing, like when you have Luka on your team, you can't get too cute with this stuff and be focused or ever have your focus even remotely rivaled by your long-term interests. You have Lucas 27. You have like a 5-year window to see what you could do with this guy. And yeah, guys remain healthy longer, and they these primes are extending by a little bit, but you know LeBron hasn't really figured into the championship conversation for 5+ ish years or so, right? Steph won a championship at what was it? That was 3-4 years ago, and they've kind of fallen off of a cliff. These windows end faster than you think, and for the like basically, here's the extent of my patience with Giannis. You have this, you have this trade transaction window, and very early on next summer to say you're leaving. And if you don't, if Giannis is still waffling, you know, by mid-June, after this season comes to a close, and if the first story that we get out of Milwaukee after their season ends isn't Giannis has spoken to, what is his name, John Hurst or something like that, and all of Milwaukee's leadership, and he has demanded a trade. If that isn't the first story that we get there, if you're the Lakers, I say, all right, enough. We're not doing this. We're not going to keep on waiting while we have Luka at this age and at this stage of his career, for Giannis to wake up and actually play the bad guy for once. So that's where I'm at on the Luka Giannis, the Jokic Giannis thing. Jokic isn't going anywhere, and there's a pretty good chance that Giannis might not either. So you may as well just go out and make your roster as good as you possibly can. And then if it comes time that you have to like turn the players that you used assets on into more assets to go out and get Giannis, well then make it so that the guys that you use assets on now are also going to be worthwhile investments for other teams down the road. Like that was one of the things that the Lakers kind of ran into as a bit of an issue for the Luka or for the AD and LeBron run, was the guys that they were using assets on, or even the guy that they used, the trade that they made that required the highest price, Russell Westbrook, was clearly declining. And the problem with acquiring a Russell Westbrook in decline is that if it doesn't work out, you're going to wind up turning the dollar that you spent on Russell Westbrook into 35 cents. And the the Dennis Schroeder trade comes to mind as well. A lot of the signings that the Lakers made were players who were in decline or later in their career, and when the Lakers signed those guys, they weren't able to turn any of them into draft picks or anything. So, like, I I would like to see the Lakers use whatever back channel, obviously legal, but use whatever back channel information that they can to come to a conclusion on Giannis before some of these other teams, and use and basically use that time while other teams are waiting for Giannis as a market inefficiency to go out and improve their team with still youngish players who are on the rise, who you could even down the road still be able to turn into something just in case it doesn't work out, right? And also stop whiffing in the first round of these NBA drafts. Like that's, really, I could talk about winning on the margins or losing on the margins and decisions on coaches and decisions on personnel and all these other things, free agency signings with whatever exceptions. But at the end of the day, probably the biggest problem that the Lakers have right now is that they had two straight first round picks that have done exactly nothing for the organization. Jalen Hood-Schifino was a bust, and now he's gone. And Dalton Connect has been a bust, and he's probably about to be gone. And that's just very, very difficult when it comes to building out the rest of your team, to just get absolutely nothing in return for first round draft pick type capital. But still got to figure out like how to navigate after making those mistakes. And like, frankly, that's why the Lakers are where they're at and why the Warriors are where they're at. And, neither team has been able to figure it out, in large part because it requires the people involved to look in the mirror and say, yep, hand of God, I screwed up. All right, let's go here to the top of the list here. And Let's see. Here we go. Wander the Blue Wizard writes, am I crazy, or is there a world where this offseason we spend $40 to $50 million to steal Peyton Watson and Walker Kessler? Well, so, did a little asking around, and I don't think the Nuggets, there's any world where the Nuggets just let Peyton Watson walk, given the season that he's having right now. And especially if the team that he would be walking to would be the Lakers. I think that organization, that Denver organization, has a particular, you know, fork in its side when it comes to how it feels about the Lakers. So that you have that. Walker Kessler, that one's kind of interesting. I think it's probably likelier that Ainge signs Kessler to a respectable number and then looks to flip him when it, is clear that Walker Kessler is healthier. Um, I actually think that, like, I wouldn't hate if the Lakers basically used a first round pick and Dalton on Walker Kessler right now. That would mean that you have the starting center next year on your roster right now. And yeah, it would be a bit of a bummer to not immediately improve your roster by doing that. But the other thing too is the Lakers, when you trade for a player, um, you have obviously, as we found out with Mark Williams last year, but when you trade for a player, you have your doctors go in and look at the medicals and see what the situation might be there. And look, let's be frank, the Utah Jazz have been tanking for I don't know how long now. And I'll say it, it wouldn't shock me if uh the Lakers doctors were to look at the UCL joint, or that I think it was his shoulder that Walker Kessler got worked on, and found that, like, actually no, maybe there is a world where he returns this year, and maybe in a world where there's more incentive for him to return for the Lakers compared to for him to return to the Utah Jazz, then if you're the Lakers, you want to take that chance too. I wouldn't hate that. So, like, basically my thing is, and I've been saying this now for a little while, I want the Lakers to walk away with at least one, if not two starters, this trade deadline moving forward. And or at the very least, like, finish the season with a starting lineup that makes more sense than the one that they began it. And if you can get Kessler for, because he's still really underpaid. And then, by the way, you have the ability to sign him and have him on a really small cap hold as well. Like, there are worse ways to use that first round pick. And the Lakers, over the last couple of first round picks that they used, found a couple of the worst ways to use first round draft assets. Oh, wrong button. All right, last couple of questions because I got to start cooking dinner. Yeah, Gorilla the Conqueror, I think signing Dwight on a minimum gave Pelinka a false sense that he could do that all the time. Oh, for sure. Right? Like, how many years in a row did the Lakers employ centers at the minimum, and how many of those centers actually panned out, especially to the extent that Dwight did, right? The closest you could probably say is Jackson Hayes, but even he isn't the starting caliber big anymore. So, like, was that the win that Dwight was? Probably not. And I kind of look at centers in the NBA now as running backs in football, in that a lot of people keep on trying to minimize the position. And for a long time, the position was, I think, completely overlooked. And then eventually the Lakers were like, wait, everybody is going so small. We have LeBron, we have Anthony Davis, we have Dwight and JaVale. What if we just mash fools? And, by really focusing on those things and really maximizing your, or basically basing your identity off of those guys just being bigger, stronger, faster, more physical than their competition, the Lakers got a championship out of it. And I kind of feel like, a lot of the smart teams out there in the NFL, they have good running backs, maybe even plural, right? You look at what the Rams are doing with Kyron Williams and their other rookie, who drove me nuts in fantasy, because McVay probably used him more, right? But like than I wanted him to. But like, you have the Rams with Kyron Williams, and even the Rams back in the day, they had Todd Gurley, right? And he was a key figure to their success. You have in Detroit, you have the two running backs there. And in the Denver Broncos are hoping to get back their starting running back, and RJ Harvey has been really good for them. And we're living in this era where the running back, for a while, it was like, oh, don't worry about spending on running backs, it's not worth it, they aren't going to do anything for you. And meanwhile, like, the Niners with Christian McCaffrey and all these teams, they finally realized, ooh, actually that is an important um, that is kind of an important position, and the teams that got out ahead of it are probably happy for doing so. And the Lakers drove me nuts. They did get out ahead of that trend, and then we're like, yeah, but we actually screwed that up. You guys have fun building your teams that way, and then everybody built their teams that way, and the Lakers are finally just now with like Drew Timme and Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton recreating like a C, if not D or E level version of the JaVale, Dwight, AD, LeBron type front courts. But I guess better late than never, and I'm happy that they finally did it, because I really liked. I watched that game again this morning, um, and it really shows the amount of size and physicality that the Lakers had on the court there. And especially if Drew Timme is able to continue spacing the floor, like that is a legit identity that the Lakers can build on. Rob, please pay attention and double and triple down to that, please. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna address this really quickly, and then we're gonna get up out of here, because I also have meal prep crap. All right. RJ Quick writes, let's not talk about the constant crying to refs, but let's say that's what LeBron does, and let's let Shea get away with a little, so we have him as the next scapegoat. I don't know. Let's see. All right. Oh, okay. RJ Quick started with Luka as a terrible basketball player, flopping, offensive fouling, and shot chucking on offense while offering nothing on defense. And this is just how this shows the control the algorithm / media narrative have. And let's not talk about the constant crying, blah, 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 blah. And then he is calling Luka a manufactured superstar. Remember all that stuff I said at the beginning of the show? This is how a lot of NBA players feel about their international colleagues or rivals, right? Like that doesn't come out of nowhere. I disagree with it. I do think that Luka complains too much. You have teams like Charles Lee, when the Lakers played the Charlotte Hornets the other day, basically anytime his team got a rebound, he told them to run, in no small part because he knew that Luka or LeBron were going to sit there and whine to the referees, and that would give the Hornets a man advantage in transition. Like that is a problem for the Lakers. It's like the opposite of a market inefficiency. The Lakers are uniquely disadvantaged in this one regard because Luka and LeBron whine too much. Now, as far as like Luka being propped up, I'm sorry, man. The numbers kind of speak for themselves. Like he produces at such a crazy level that it doesn't take a ton of propping him up. Now, is it possible that some members of the media overlook some of the defensive questions, um, with potential subconscious biases in play? Yeah, I would say it's not just possible. I would even go so far as to say it's probable. Like I look at some of the especially like former quarterbacks on like ESPN and the way that they talk about Josh Allen versus other quarterbacks, and I'm just like rubbing my eyes. It's like, how do you not hear the differences in your tone here? And then as if that wasn't funny enough, after shitting on CJ Stroud and after shitting on um Lamar Jackson all these years and stuff like that, without mentioning some of the other ways that maybe his team or their teammates let them down in some spots, in the way that they allow for Josh Allen's teammates to let him down. All of that, I forget which former quarterback it was. It's one of those dude who like doesn't season his chicken, but he was like saying how like, oh well, after watching the tape, boy, Drake May really showed out, and I'm like, all right, he was awful. He also turned the ball over a ton. He was just lucky that he played CJ Stroud. And so I'm not, the reason I bring all of this up isn't to say whether or not I agree or disagree, whatever. I do think it is worth acknowledging the potential for at the very least subconscious biases, and the role that they play in some of our analysis. And I always, I pointed this out at the time when Jokic was on his way to potentially winning a third straight MVP. And I pointed out how it's like, Michael dealt with voter fatigue, LeBron dealt with voter fatigue. Steve Nash didn't seem to deal with that same voter fatigue, and Larry Bird didn't seem to deal with as much voter fatigue. And now Jokic is well on his way to winning his third MVP, and he doesn't seem to be dealing with as much voter fatigue. A little weird, right? Like, we can at least notice the common denominators there. And I had some friends in the industry reach out to me and say, like, you're full of shit. You're this, you're that. How dare you? It's like, I'm just pointing out trends, and so like I understand where RJ Quick is coming in, where some NBA players, even like I've had conversations with NBA players, and they bring some of this stuff up. And who am I to tell an NBA player that those trends and narratives don't exist? Of course they do. I've watched it. And so like but that said, I also think it's possible that RJ went a little too far the other way here, saying that like Luka's a bad basketball player. He's not. You know, he has holes in his game, and those holes in his game are part of the reason that the Lakers aren't where they need to be. And once those holes are addressed, the Lakers will be better off for it. And here's hoping that they eventually get addressed. That's all we could all hope for. Good? Good? All right, good. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and hitting me with all the questions that you did. I really appreciate them. Again, we have the Lakers back in action tomorrow night. They are playing the Denver Nuggets tomorrow in Denver. That is a late game. Fantastic. Raj and I are going to be live here in the lounge to break down that game. Should be an interesting one, right? The Nuggets don't have Jokic, but have been playing really good basketball. Jamal Murray has been a man obsessed. He is well on his way to an all-star bid for himself. So the Lakers are going to have to figure out a way to contain him. And so we'll see if he is able to do that. Until then, and until the next time, or they are able to do that. But until then, and the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.